Hi everyone, so this is Neil, and this is where we're now going to start working together on the three different parts of your Module 2 assessment. Over the next few weeks you're going to draft them, get peer feedback on them and edit them so that they'll be in good shape to hand in. And Module 2, you will recall, is the module on linking theory and practice. Now, for this module there are 5 different learning outcomes which are assessed in 3 separate parts of the assessment. The first 3 learning outcomes are assessed in the longest part of the assessment, which is the essay, which we're going to come on to in a couple of weeks' time. And there where you critically evaluate some of the different models that you've used from the PG Cert in your own teaching to see what you think of the models now that you've used them. And in that assignment you have to touch on some pedagogic models, that's models to do with teaching and learning, first outcome. Second outcome, some models to do with feedback and assessment. And third outcome, some models to do with how you're going to create or how you've created a really positive learning environment in your class. Those 3 go together all in the same assignment, and as I say, we'll come on to that in a couple of weeks' time. The other 2 learning outcomes are each assessed separately in a shorter piece of writing. The one we're going to start with today is the 4th learning outcome, which asks you to demonstrate a critically reflective understanding of student support, showing awareness of any relevant legal frameworks and requirements in post-compulsory education. The 5th one is to do with you engaging with quality enhancement processes, such as being observed teaching or getting feedback from students at the end of the year. But the one we're going to focus on today is number 4. Now, just before we go on to that in detail, just to remind you, the maximum permitted length for all 3 pieces in total is 4,000 words. And as with Module 1, the only word count limit that you have to hit is that 4,000 words. And it's 4,000 of your own words. So your bibliography doesn't count and any quotations that you put in your assignment don't count. And it's due to be handed in on Monday the 4th of January at 5 o'clock. We have a suggested word length for each of the 3 pieces, but remember that's just a suggestion, it's the 4,000 words is the only one that really matters. Okay, so here is the assessment brief for this first part of the assignment, and it's this. And we suggest that this is going to be about 750 words. You're asked to write a short, anonymised case study which shows your critically reflective understanding of student support and your awareness of relevant legal frameworks and requirements in post-compulsory education, which has involved your work with an individual student or with a small group of students. And what this is about is any individual, most people tend to write about an individual student, and in what follows I'm going to discuss students in the singular, but if it is a small group that's absolutely fine, you can talk about more than one. But it's a student who, for whatever reason, you've needed to make some adjustments for, or you've needed to offer them some particular individual support of some kind. It could be that they have a particular learning need which has been statemented, so you might have a student who's been statemented with dyslexia or ADHD or visual impairment, any of those kinds of things. Or it could just be the student who came to you in tutorial and for whatever reason they approached you and they needed some individual help, which could have been actually something quite personal or something academic or whatever. So there's a whole wide range of things here, but it's any student who you've offered individual support to. And this is to assess the 4th learning outcome, where you're asked to demonstrate a critically reflective understanding of student support, showing awareness of any relevant legal frameworks. Obviously, if you're dealing with a student who has a learning disability, then there is a legal framework behind that. So you're not just helping that student out of the goodness of your heart, you're helping them because you're legally required to do so. So if you were to write about a situation like that, then you would be expected to show awareness of which acts are relevant here, and you'll have to go off and research that for yourselves. That's part of the assignment. It could be, however, that you're just helping a student in a more personal way, in which case it may be that there are no relevant legal frameworks for your particular case study, so you have to have a think about that as you're writing your case study. Now, both the assessment brief and the learning outcome itself have used this phrase, critically reflective. And really, when we're asking someone to be critically reflective, what we're looking for is that you're going to explain the reasoning behind your actions. Why have you done what you've done? You're going to evaluate your outcomes of your actions, what worked well, what didn't work well, how do you know, what's your evidence, and you're going to reflect on what you've learned from all of this. So if you apply it to this 750-word essay, your essay needs to really answer the following questions. First of all, how did you become aware that the student had needs that they were hoping that you could help them meet? Did it come from student support? Was it something you observed in class? Was it something the student came and told you themselves? How did you become aware of their situation? Secondly, having become aware of their situation, so what did you decide to do and why did you think that was going to be helpful? What was your thinking behind that? Thirdly, having carried out whatever actions you carried out, how well did this work? You need to give very specific evidence there, and you need to explain what you think worked well and what you think didn't work well and why you think that was. And then finally, you can write about what you've learned from this and what you think you might do differently in the future. Now, that's quite a lot potentially to cover in 750 words, so your writing needs to be very concise. And other than mentioning any legal frameworks which are relevant, you don't need to describe them at great length, you just simply need to list them and say that you're aware of them. You wouldn't really be expected to quote from any books or anything you've read in this part of the assignment. This is purely a piece of personal reflection. There's a few little further issues. First one I've already mentioned is that there may or may not in fact be any relevant legal frameworks, but if there are, you simply need to show you're aware of them. Secondly, sometimes people write about occasions where the support they've been giving has been in class, they've differentiated in some way in class, they've provided different resources, whatever. But it may equally be support you've given outside of class through tutorials or other forms of contact with the student, or it may be both. It's absolutely fine. As I say, this is one of those parts of the assignment where there's a really wide range of different things that people have done. And it's really important that your student should remain absolutely anonymous in your write-up. So call him or her student X, or make it clear that you've given them a pseudonym. Okay, so on the basis of that, I'm looking forward to seeing everybody doing your first drafts, getting them on the blog, and then we'll engage in some feedback together. Okay, enjoy.